قرية أكابر مجرميها ليمكروا فيها وما يمكرون إلا بأنفسهم وما يشعرون. وإذا جاءتهم آية قالوا لن نؤمن حتى نؤتى مثل ما أوتي رسل الله الله أعلم حيث يجعل رسالته سيصيب الذين أجرموا صغار عند الله سيصيب الذين أجرموا صغار عند الله وعذاب شديد بما كانوا يمكرون.
فمن يرد الله أن يهديه يشرح صدره للإسلام ومن يرد أن يضله يجعل صدره ضيقا حرجا كأنما يصعد في السماء كذلك يجعل الله الرجس على الذين لا يؤمنون وهذا صراط ربك مستقيما قد فصلنا الآيات لقوم يذكرون. لهم دار السلام عند ربهم وهو وليهم بما كانوا يعملون. ويوم يحشرهم جميعا يا معشر الجن قد استكثرتم من الإنس وقال أولياؤهم من الإنس ربنا استمتع بعضنا ببعض وبلغنا أجلنا الذي أجلت لنا قال النار مثواكم خالدين فيها إلا ما شاء الله إن ربك حكيم عليم. وكذلك نولي بعض الظالمين بعضا بما كانوا يكسبون. يا معشر الجن والإنس ألم يأتكم رسل منكم يقصون عليكم آياتي وينذرونكم لقاء يومكم هذا قالوا شهدنا على أنفسنا وغرتهم الحياة الدنيا وشهدوا على أنفسهم أنهم كانوا كافرين. ذلك أن لم يكن ربك مهلك القرى بظلم وأهلها غافلون. ولكل درجات مما عملوا وما ربك بغافل عما يعملون. وربك الغني ذو الرحمة إن يشأ يذهبكم ويستخلف من بعدكم ما يشاء كما أنشأكم من ذرية قوم آخرين. إنما توعدون لآت وما أنتم بمعجزين. قل يا قوم اعملوا على مكانتكم إني عامل فسوف تعلمون من تكون له عاقبة الدار إنه لا يفلح الظالمون. وجعلوا لله مما ذرأ من الحرث والأنعام نصيبا فقالوا هذا لله بزعمهم وهذا لشركائنا فما كان لشركائهم فلا يصل إلى الله وما كان لله فهو يصل إلى شركائهم ساء ما يحكمون. وكذلك زين لكثير من المشركين
يطعمها إلا من نشاء بزعمهم وأنعام حرمت ظهورها وأنعام لا يذكرون اسم الله عليها افتراء عليه سيجزيهم بما كانوا يفترون. وقالوا ما في بطون هذه الأنعام خالصة لذكورنا ومحرم على أزواجنا وإن يكن ميتة فهم فيه شركاء سيجزيهم وصفهم إنه حكيم عليم. قد خسر الذين قتلوا أولادهم سفها بغير علم وحرموا ما رزقهم الله افتراء على الله قد ضلوا وما كانوا مهتدين. وهو الذي أنشأ جنات معروشات وغير معروشات والنخل والزرع مختلفا أكله والزيتون والرمان متشابها وغير متشابه كلوا من ثمره إذا أثمر وآتوا حقه يوم حصاده ولا تسرفوا إنه لا يحب المسرفين. ومن الأنعام حمولة وفرشا كلوا مما رزقكم الله ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. 8 أزواج من الضأن 2 ومن المعز 2 قل أذكرين حرم أم الأنثيين أما اشتملت عليه أرحام الأنثيين نبئوني بعلم إن كنتم صادقين. ومن الإبل 2 ومن البقر 2 قل أذكرين حرم أم الأنثيين أما اشتملت عليه أرحام الأنثيين أم كنتم شهداء إذ وصاكم الله بهذا فمن أظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا ليضل الناس بغير علم إن الله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين قل لا أجد فيما أوحي إلي محرما على طاعم يطعمه إلا أن يكون ميتة أو دما مسفوحا أو لحم خنزير فإنه رجس أو فسقا أهل لغير الله به فمن اضطر غير باغ ولا عاد فإن ربك غفور رحيم وعلى الذين هادوا حرمنا كل ذي ظفر ومن البقر والغنم حرمنا عليهم شحومهما إلا ما حملت ظهورهما أو الحوايا أو ما اختلط بعظم ذلك جزيناهم ببغيهم وإنا لصادقون
فإن كذبوك فقل ربكم ذو رحمة واسعة ولا يرد بأسه عن القوم المجرمين سيقول الذين أشركوا لو شاء الله ما أشركنا ولا آباؤنا ولا حرمنا من شيء كذلك كذب الذين من قبلهم حتى ذاقوا بأسنا قل هل عندكم من علم فتخرجوه لنا إن تتبعون إلا الظن وإن أنتم إلا تخرصون قل فلله الحجة البالغة فلو شاء لهداكم أجمعين قل هلم شهداءكم الذين يشهدون أن الله حرم هذا فإن شهدوا فلا تشهد معهم ولا تتبع أهواء الذين كذبوا بآياتنا والذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة وهم بربهم يعدلون قل تعالوا واتل ما حرم ربكم عليكم ألا تشركوا به شيئا وبالوالدين إحسانا ولا تقتلوا أولادكم من إملاق نحن نرزقكم وإياهم ولا تقربوا الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن ولا تقتلوا النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق ذلكم وصاكم به لعلكم تعقلون ولا تقربوا مال اليتيم إلا بالتي هي أحسن حتى يبلغ أشده وأوفوا الكيل والميزان بالقسط لا نكلف نفسا إلا وسعها وإذا قلتم فاعدلوا ولو كان ذا قربى وبعهد الله أوفوا ذلكم وصاكم به لعلكم تذكرون وأن هذا صراطي مستقيما فاتبعوه ولا تتبعوا السبل فتفرق بكم عن سبيله ذلكم وصاكم به لعلكم تتقون ثم آتينا موسى الكتاب تماما على الذي أحسن وتفصيلا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة لعلهم بلقاء ربهم يؤمنون وهذا كتاب أنزلناه مبارك فاتبعوه واتقوا لعلكم ترحمون أن تقولوا إنما أنزل الكتاب على طائفتين من قبلنا وإن كنا عن دراستهم لغافلين أو تقولوا لو أنا أنزل علينا الكتاب لكنا أهدى منهم فقد جاءكم بينة من ربكم وهدى ورحمة فمن أظلم ممن كذب بآيات الله وصدف عنها سنجزي الذين يصدفون عن آياتنا سوء العذاب بما كانوا يصدفون
هل ينظرون إلا أن تأتيهم
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning everyone. It is 25th of the holy month of Ramadan and we are halfway through, more than half of the first or the last tenth of this holy month, and indeed the month has gone way faster than we imagined, and this feeling was as if that the month has just started. So inshallah, you have done your best effort on fasting and doing all the good amal, the Layali al-Qadr, the events of Shahadat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So the month of Ramadan goes full on for most of the Mu'mineen and Muslimin, inshallah. So just a quick announcement regarding today's Sahur timings. So today Sahur ends at 5:30 a.m. and the namaz of Fajr will be at 5:40 a.m. Maghrib, Azan, or the time of Iftar, according to Atna Ashri, time today is 5:56 p.m. So it is again becoming shorter as the time goes further. So inshallah, in a couple of minutes, we will be going to our lecture. Just a few other announcements regarding the coming events of the week. So tonight is a Thursday, and of course every Thursday we have Dua Kumal at different centers around the world. So likewise, Hussainiya Islamic Al-Bait Foundation is conducting Dua Kumal program every week. So it will be highly encouraged, especially in the month of Ramadan, if you can participate. So it will be 8 p.m. and I believe there will be small talk by Sayyid Mudarrisi. I'm not 100% sure, but there will be announcements sent if there will be a talk. But Dua Kumal will be at 8 p.m. Tomorrow, Friday, being the last Friday of the holy month. So last Friday of the holy month, according to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he announced it as Jumatul Wada, or the farewell Friday. So the concept behind farewell Friday is that, of course, this glorious holy month, which you and me can also feel, that it has its own presence, which is prescribed by our Prophet in many of his khutbah, in his speeches, in his talks, and our Imams have also emphasized on this fact that the holy month has its reality, has its significance, has its presence in the life. And when someone significant leaves us, we farewell the guest according to their status. And of course, the status of this holy month is far beyond anyone else. So we are bidding farewell to this holy month. So I highly encourage everyone to participate in Salatul Jummah at your locations, and here at Hussainiya Islamic Al-Bait Foundation. Also, there will be Salatul Jummah starting at 12:30 p.m., which is the time for Dhuhr these days. So do take part in the Jummah prayers. And also tomorrow, being the last Friday, Imam Khomeini Rahmatullah alayh, he announced that day as the day of Quds, Yawm al-Quds. So Yawm al-Quds being the day to stand up against the oppression, and he signified, he put the significance on the issue of Al-Quds, Palestine, Al-Quds, Jerusalem, which is the capital of Palestine, being the root cause of a lot of conflicts across the world, especially the battle between Haqq and Batil. So it is a stand against all the oppressions, not just limited to Palestine, but we can say in recent history it has started from Palestine, but also for the people of Afghanistan, for the people of Hazara tribe in general, and for the people of Yemen, for the people of Syria who have been oppressed by ISIS and their likes, for the people of Iraq who have been oppressed, for the people of Bahrain, and for the people of the African countries who have been subjugated for many centuries in the past now, and of course for the people of all across the world who are either or being oppressed by the politics or by the system. So we do remember them, we do stand with them, we make a stand that we are not along with the one who oppress, but we are along with who are being oppressed. And in the end, it's not about the extent of your involvement. It's about your participation and with whom you are standing. So even a small voice does make a difference, and if not making a difference in front of the people, but at least for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do make your contribution, and I highly encourage everyone, if you can participate in the protest at the Atiyah Square, which will be most likely around 2 p.m. I'm not sure again about the timings of the protest. So that was for the announcements. And coming week, the day of Eid will be either Tuesday or on Wednesday. But again, it depends on the sighting of the moon. But usually there are predictions based on the calculations, which can sort of 90% tell us whether it is going to be Eid on that day or not. So inshallah, we'll make required announcements in that regard as the time comes, inshallah. So once again, thank you so much for joining us in this early hour, and don't forget us in your du'as for rest of the month. So we will now start the talk by Sayyid Fadil Sayyid from Sydney, and after the talk we'll meet again inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا صاحب السكينة المدفونة في المدينة المبعوث رحمة للعالمين أبو القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيت طيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين وبعد. ولعنة دائم على أعداء مجمعين من الآن إلى يوم قيام الدين. قال جل جلاله في محكم كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال ربي إني دعوت قومي ليلا ونهارا آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I get into the continuation of the importance of implementing the Quran and going into the deeper meaning of the Quran, Many people have asked me sometimes that I try to read the Quran, and I feel that it's not really having an effect on me. And in this response, I've told them a beautiful story that I've heard narrated once, that once a young boy used to live with his grandfather. He was a yatim, an orphan, but he tried to imitate his grandfather. He used to see his father read the Quran continuously, and he would read. And then one day his grandfather came in and he sees him frustrated. He says, "Granddad," the granddad asked the grandson, "What's wrong?" He says, "I don't know how you do it, Granddad. I read the Quran, but I feel like it's not having an effect on me." He says, "Okay, I'll answer that question shortly." But for the time being, it was a cold winter's day. And so they had, what they used to do, they used to have a bucket that would leave near the fireplace. And the bucket would have it's mainly used to carry coal, faham. And it was dirty and it wasn't in the best condition. And it had bits of holes in it. So he says, the grandfather says, "You know what, I need some water for the usage to around the house. Can you go and use that, can you go and get me some water?" So the young boy goes to pick up the good bucket that was next to it. He says, no, I want you to use that bucket that we use for the coal. He says, "But how is that, Granddad? It's all broken and it's going to leak water." He goes, "Please, I need the other bucket for something else. You just take that one." And it was a bit of a trip to the river. So he would go down to the river and then pick up the water, and as he's coming through, it would start leaking through the bucket. He started getting frustrated. He went down, up and down several times, and then finally he filled that place that the grandfather wanted to fill. And he said, "Have you finished?" He said, "Finally, I have." He said, "Granddad, I would have finished this a long time ago if you had let me use the proper bucket." He says, "I don't understand. Why did you make me use this bucket for?" He said, "But you asked me for a question about the effects of the Quran, and you think that it had no effect on you." He said, "Yes, but what's that got to do with all this, what I've been doing now?" He said, "When you took that bucket, the bucket that was all black, did you notice how dirty it was?" He says, "Yes." He goes, "Have a look at it now." He says, "Yeah." Oh, he goes, "Yeah, it's all clean now." He goes, "Yes." He goes, "Did you notice the effect of it? Because you were too busy concentrating on getting the water from one place to the other." He goes, "No, I didn't." He goes, "The Quran does the same thing. The miraculous words of the Quran purify you without even you realizing it." He goes, "But it just takes time to absorb the reality of it. And usually the effects of it will come much more quicker if we open up our hearts to the Almighty Allah. And the way to do this is by making sure that we don't sin, because we have said and we have mentioned before that the qaswat al-qalb comes from the excess of sinning, especially al-istisghar fi al-dhunub, the ones that take the sin very lightly. So the Quran has many ways. We have even narrations that talk about just by looking at the words of the Quran, you get reward. That by looking at it, we have narrations that said that it's a cure for any illnesses in the eyes. Everything of barakah comes from the Holy Quran. So with time, with your understanding, you will find that it does have an effect on you. For instance, when we first went to school, we didn't know what the ABC was about, or the alphabet, or whenever the teachers gave us something or told us to learn something. But later on, slowly, as our knowledge, perspective got more and more, then we started to understand why they taught us this. The same thing with the Quran. So, going back to the verse in which I read, it was from Surah Nuh, where God says, وَقَالِ رَبِّي إِنِّي دَعَوْتُ قَوْمِي لَيْلًا وَالنَّهَارًا, that, "Oh my Lord, that I called upon my people night and day," or day and night. And honestly, if you look at the struggle the Prophet Nuh alayhi salam went through, it was of the greatest possible jihads that an individual or prophet went through. And that's why Imam Zain Abidin has a beautiful saying. He says that if you want to look at the patience of, like if you want to look at patience, then look at Prophet Ayub. If you want to look at thankfulness, look at Prophet Nuh. Because even after all this that he went through, he was a thankful servant. And if you want to look at the jealousy, then look at the brothers of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. But going back to this to show you how this one verse can be implemented into today's society, that the call sometimes for justice is as they said, falls on deaf ear. No one hears it. And we can see that today's propaganda, how much the injustice and oppression is being, we can say, promoted by the media outlets through the TV or through newspapers or through the internet. Why? Because history, as has been proved, has always been written by the victors. And in most times the victors are the ones that have done the oppression and the injustice. And it's just unfortunate that these media outlets are all run by people that are against opening up the minds of people and keeping the true facts from, or opening the people's mind to see what is really happening in the world. So Nuh, the era of Nuh was that where propaganda was used. When I say this, for many years, you can imagine, we already mentioned that he called upon his people for 950 years. Do you know why it took so long? Because what would happen when Nuh would go out after being told to convey the message, they would, first of all, attack him, and to make sure that their message of not following him would stay alive, they used a propaganda type system. How was this so? The father, upon dying, would come and bring his kids in and write and have like a will, a wasiyah, and say, see that man over there? He's a person that will trick you. He's a person that is a majnoon, a magician. Do not listen to him, and make sure you keep this message alive. So they would use this, they would implement this over and over again. So generation after generation after generation would be lost. And this is the same that goes on into today's society. All we hear today that Islam is a terrorist organization. Every time we see a movie in Hollywood, the terrorists are always, Mediterranean looks, Arabs. This is their way to implement, to make sure that this message stays alive, that these people are the enemy, not us. We've never done anything bad, even though they've been, if you look at behind every war, you'll find that how many countries that these so-called people or countries of justice have invaded, how many millions of people they have killed and left without homes and destruction and so forth. But so Nuh would after all this, he'll be a thankful servant. SubhanAllah, Malcolm X has a beautiful saying. He says, beware of the newspapers that will make the oppressive people look like they're innocent, and the innocent people look like they are the oppressors. And this is what happened throughout history, that whenever a call came with the Prophet, they had people there that would try to manipulate the message of the Prophet and use false propaganda. And this would continue on. That reminds me of a story that one day a lady came and her mother was cooking fish. And she had noticed the last several times when the mother was cooking the fish that she would cut the tail of the fish and then put it in the fry pan. So she asked the mother, why do you always cut the tail of the fish? She goes, I saw my mother do that. She goes, why don't you go and ask her? Did you ever ask your mother? She says, no, I just saw my mother do it. So the girl went to the grandmother. She goes, grandmother, why did you used to cut the tail of the fish? She says, oh my dear. She goes, back then we were pretty poor and we had a very small fry pan and the fish wouldn't fit in there. So we had to cut the tail off to fit the fish in. But she said, but my mum has big fry pans and she still cuts it. She goes, I don't know why. She's never asked me and I've never told her. All she did was that she saw her mother do this and she kept this away, this tradition alive. And that's what happens with many people. Many people see something happening or see an individual doing something and they never ask why. And they don't go deeper and to find the real facts of the story. So back to Nuh. Nuh, as he said, he would call his people day and night. And if you look into the story of Prophet Nuh, they would put their fingers in their ears, put their clothes over their head, and they make themselves look like crazy. And still he went forth and called upon his people. After another important point to point out with Nuh, ala nabiyina wa ali alayhi salam, that Nuh also through this, even though he asked God several times to bring down the punishment, God said to him, be patient, O Nuh. And going back to, I just missed one point and I'll end it by this, that you can see that the propaganda media vices of modern day history was implemented even in Islamic factor, that from the story of Nuh to all the other prophets, that Muawiyah, may God's curse be upon him, used the same propaganda, false propaganda system when it came to destroying the characters of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, especially Amir al-Mu'mineen. He paid so many people to falsify a hadith, to bring in all these false accusations, to the point that when Imam Ali alayhi salam was struck on the head by Ibn Miljam, may God's curse be upon him, and in the best of places in the mosque, in the best of positions in sujood, that people, when they found out Imam Ali alayhi salam was struck and eventually martyred, they said, what did Imam Ali alayhi salam pray? That's how much propaganda can do, false propaganda can do. But of course, the likes of yourself, when you benefit yourself by the knowledge of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, and you can be this living example of truthfulness in this world, then you can make sure that the true message is kept alive. And that's why we have a narration that we say that a mu'min, a faithful, pious mu'min, he says, Ashraf or ahaz min al-Kaaba. There's variation in the narration, that the mu'min is actually is more honorable than the house of God. Do you know what that means? Because the house of God, even though it's a sanctity and it's in a position, but that position, we usually face it when we do our prayers or, sacrifice animals in a halal way, but it's stationary. While the mu'min is a walking representation of that house. And when you're representation of the house, you represent the true religion and the true message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you put your trust with God Almighty, you put your trust, you know that the nasr is from Him, that He has promised that this message will remain alive, even though people will try to distinguish your nur, yuriduna nutfa nur Allah bifaham. They will try to distinguish the nur, but God will say, oh, but because you are truly a servant of mine, I will make sure that the truthfulness will always be alive to the day of judgment. But you do this by deepening yourself into the stories of the Quran. I gave you just a brief introduction to that of Prophet Nuh and that are propaganda. There's still a lot of other stories when it comes to Prophet Nuh. The filtration system. Did we ever ask ourselves how many people went onto the ark? Or how they went onto the ark? What about the two wives of Prophet Nuh? The good one and the bad one? And what about the son? What do these stories represent? Once again, refer back to the Ahlul Bayt. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq in becoming close to the Ahlul Bayt, especially in the month of Sahar Ramadan, and to have this continuous love of the Quran throughout our entire life. Hadi wa akhir da'wana, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wa sallallahu ala Muhammad, wa ala Ahlul Bayt tayyibin at-tahirin.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. So hope you enjoyed the discussion, the talk by Sayyid Fadil. So now we will move straight to the Dua Sahar. Just before I request it to be played, the time for Sahur ends at 5:30 a.m. today. So inshallah, we will have Dua Sahar now. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك من بحائك بأبحاه وكل بحائك بهي. اللهم إني أسألك ببحائك كله. اللهم إني أسألك من جمالك بأجمله وكل جمالك جميل. اللهم إني أسألك بجمالك كله. اللهم إني أسألك من جلالك بعجله وكل جلالك جليل. اللهم إني أسألك بجلالك كله. اللهم إني أسألك من عظمتك بعظمها وكل عظمتك عظيما. اللهم إني أسألك بعظمتك كلها. اللهم إني أسألك من نورك بأنواره وكل نورك نير. اللهم إني أسألك بنورك كله. اللهم إني أسألك من رحمتك بأوسعها وكل رحمتك واسعة. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك كلها. اللهم إني أسألك من كلماتك بأتمها وكل كلماتك تامة. اللهم إني أسألك بكلماتك كلها. اللهم إني أسألك من كمالك بأكمله، وكل كمالك كامل. اللهم إني أسألك بكمالك كله. اللهم إني أسألك من أسمائك بأكبرها، وكل أسمائك كبيرا. اللهم إني أسألك بأسمائك كلها. اللهم إني أسألك من عزتك بعظام، وكل عزتك عزيزا. اللهم إني أسألك بعزتك كلها. اللهم إني أسألك من مشيئتك بأمزاها، وكل مشيئتك ماضيا. اللهم إني أسألك بمشيئتك كلها. اللهم إني أسألك من قدرتك بالقدرة التي استطلت بها على كل شيء، وكل قدرتك مستطيلا. اللهم إني أسألك بقدرتك كلها. اللهم إني أسألك من علمك بأنفذه، وكل علمك نافذ. اللهم إني أسألك بعلمك كله. اللهم إني أسألك من قولك بأرزاهم، وكل قولك رضي. اللهم إني أسألك بقولك كله. اللهم إني أسألك من مسائلك بأحبها إليك، وكل مسائلك إليك حبيبا. اللهم إني أسألك بمسائلك كلها. اللهم إني أسألك من شرفك بأشرفه، وكل شرفك شريف. اللهم إني أسألك بشرفك كله. اللهم إني أسألك من سلطانك بأدومه، وكل سلطانك دائم. اللهم إني أسألك بسلطانك كله. اللهم إني أسألك من ملكك بأفخره، وكل ملكك فاخر. اللهم إني أسألك بملكك كله. اللهم إني أسألك من علوك بآلهم وكل علوك اللهم إني أسألك بعلوك كله اللهم إني أسألك من منك بأقدمه وكل منك قديم اللهم إني أسألك بمنك كله اللهم إني أسألك من آياتك بأكرمهم وكل آياتك كريما اللهم إني أسألك بآياتك كلهم اللهم إني أسألك بما أنت فيه من الشان والجبروت وأسألك بكل شان وحده وجبروت وحدهم اللهم إني أسألك بما تجيبني به أسألك فأجبني يا الله.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Welcome back after Dua Sahar. So just to remind everyone that today the Sahur time ends at 5:30 a.m. That's when we are recommended to stop eating and drinking. And the Fajr Adhan, the Fajr Salah time is 10 minutes past 5:30, which is 5:40 a.m. And the time for Iftar tonight and the Maghrib is 5:56 p.m. inshallah. So now we will move to the daily dua of the holy month. Let's recite it together. And those who are following these duas from duas.org, just want to identify that sometimes these duas are not accurate in terms of the Arabic of it. So I had to refer to another source because I was trying to understand one of the word here. That wasn't great. So inshallah we'll recite it together. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma ij'alni fihi muhabban li awliyaik wa mu'adiyan li a'daik mustannan bisunnati khatimi anbiyaik ya afima qulubin nabiyyin. So again, as this dua is narrated by one of our imams through our prophet, that these duas are the mode of teaching us how to communicate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how to invoke through his names, and also teach us the lessons that what we need to practice in order to attain that proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is one of the purposes of our creation. Now the translation, let's recite it together. O Allah, on this day, make me among those who love your awliya, muhibban li awliyaik. And we know in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defines that Allah himself is wali, and his prophet is the wali, and the wali is the one who pays zakat while he is in the act of ruku. So, and we know that there is a lot of detail about the concept of wali And at sometimes in Arabic it is translated as a friend, but also it is a word for for guardian. So if we take it from the source of Quran, which is like it is someone whom God has decided upon to give the status of wali, then we can take from this dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us, so Imam is teaching us to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ask Allah to grant us that hub, that love for his awliya, and being his awliya at the highest level, of course, beside Allah, after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in terms of creation, is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Imam Ali Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, and his the Imams in his progeny, the 11 Imams in his progeny. And the wali of our time, our Imam, our Master, Sahib Zaman al-Sharif, he is the wali of our time. And after them, we have awliya in general, which are not the divinely guided awliya, but they are the awliya fil ard, like they are the awliya across the world, the people whom they are, they are close to those awliya which are given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is again through taqwa and through piety that they have achieved that proximity. So the thought that is coming to my mind from this line is that we cannot love someone while we are ignorant from them. So our habits are mere to listen to the historical events or the events that have occurred in the past to understand these awliya. But in reality, there is an ocean, there is enormous amount of talks about the instructions and debates, letters, discussions from these awliya. Like, for example, Nahjul Balagha, which is the collection of the letters, the sermons, speeches, and short advices from Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, which he has given throughout his life. These are compiled by Sayyid Radi in this book, which is a masterpiece of its own. And likewise, we have got Sahifatul Sajjadiyya, which is the book of our fourth Imam, his du'as, his way to communicate to us. So if we claim that we are the muhib, we are the lovers of awliya of Allah, and we do not get ourselves associated, acquainted with these sources of knowledge, and of course on top of everything, the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Quran, if it is not part of our life, then again we are not fulfilling the purpose of this dua. And then the dua continues, and hate your enemies, وَمُعَادِيًا لِعَادَائِكَ. So here the word of عَادِيًا لِعَادَائِكَ, that means show that opposition towards Ada of Allah. So again, we know clearly that Ada of Allah, or the enemy of Allah, are those who work against the purpose of his creation, or the instructions that he has prescribed us. And who doesn't know Shaitan, who has become an enemy of God by opposing him, by challenging his decree, knowingly that he has limitations of his own. So likewise, we do see there are very small number of people who have that mindset that that they are in power of themselves, whereas in reality we know that all the power, all the control lies in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He has delegated us to whatever we think we are powerful. And then the dua continues, following the way of your last prophet, بِسُنَّةِ خَاتِمِ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ. That means we also need to study the seerah, the life of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it is an amazing piece of history in itself. The seerah, the sunnah of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the way he lived his life from the perspective of association with awliya, and this association with a'da of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to reflect upon the life of our Prophet and see where do we stand in terms of our position. And then the dua ends, Ya asima qulub an-nabiyyin, O the guardian of the hearts of the prophets. So again, this lies in the state of heart of a person. That means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the guardian of the hearts of the Prophet. And not, I mean, of course, this dua refers to Nabiin, but he's the guardian of all of our hearts. And we know the level of heart is the deepest level of oneself. And these days in self-help, they talk about the level of heart a lot. And in Quran, there is a lot of mention about the level of heart. When we say a lot of talks on mindset, there is a level of soul set and the heart set. And the heart set is where everything generates from. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the opportunity to love His awliya and to disassociate and show our displeasure towards His a'da and follow the way of His last prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So with this dua, we will move to the next bit. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. So just to remind everyone, the time for Sahur has passed. It's 30 past 5 was the imsak time. And in 5 minutes, inshallah, will be the time for Adhan al-Fajr. I mean, I'll take this as an opportunity to share with you the dua of Makarim al-Akhlaq, just a few lines, and then we can, inshallah, move to the Adhan of Fajr. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we'll continue from the last line. وَمِنْ أُقُوِّ ذُوِ الْأَرْحَامِ الْمُبَرَّةِ, the disrespect of womb relatives with devotion. So we discussed this line that here the emphasis is on Salatul Raham and paying attention to those relatives in terms of our dealing, that not forgetting them. وَمِنْ خِذْلَانِ الْأَقْرَبِينَ النُّصْرَةِ, and asking Allah to protect us from the abandonment of the relatives with help. And this is quite common, especially those people who live in this developed part of the world, to to forget, because these days with the recession and with the COVID, a lot of people across the world, they are in need, and many of us know our relatives across the globe. And it's not just about giving financial help, it's also sometimes talking to someone, sometimes listening to someone. A small piece of advice can become plenty to our relatives. So not forgetting that. ومن حب المدارين تصيح المقمى, and the attachment of flatterers with love set right. And again, I will just read the translation. The attachment of flatterers with love set right. So Hubbul Madarin, I exactly not sure about the meaning of this, but as it says in the translation, Hubbul Madarin, perhaps it is those who are, apparently they please someone because of some, material need or something. And we do have seen people around who are apparently flatterers, and they please people for their own sake, not with that sincerity. And so Imam is teaching us to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from the attachment of flatterers, and make the direction of our love towards the right. And the next line, وَمِن رَدِّ الْمُلَابِسِينَ كَرَمِ الْعِشْرَةِ, and the rejection of fellows with generous friendliness. So in here, there are a lot of times when we get rejected by our peers, and people do become depressed and become upset because of the fact. And then Imam is saying that it's not to reciprocate the rejection with the rejection. Rather, one of the akhlaq, the trait that we need to develop in us, is to become generous and friendly, which means that it is not for the sake of that person's behavior, which deserves to be reciprocated, but for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one needs to be generous and friendly towards the creation. وَمِن مَرَارَةِ خَوْفِ الظَّالِمِينَ حَلَاوَةِ الْآمَنَةِ, and the bitterness of the fear of the wrongdoers of Zalimeen with sweetness of security. And this is the last line for today. And the bitterness of fear of the Zalimeen, that means again that feeling of being afraid of those who are unjust. And not only this is talking about the injustice on a greater scale, like what's happening in Palestine, for example, but also a small injustice that we do to ourselves or we do around ourselves, that Imam is saying that change it with the sweetness of security, al-amana. And this comes when we do things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not for the sake of our nafs, and it applies to everyone. So inshallah we'll stop our discussion here, and it is the time for the azan of Fajr, the time for Salah. Inshallah, don't forget each other in your du'as, and inshallah we'll see you tomorrow, 4:30 a.m. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن عليًا ولي الله أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين عليًا ولي الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا رسول الله. عليك وعلى آلك الطيبين الطاهرين. والحمد لله رب العالمين.